Remember, if you didn't score, that was a problem, wasn't it?
I did the whole medical, and we were actually driving up to Old Trafford to do the press conference, to sign, and the phone rang. You can see his footsteps approaching.
Your head's like that.
And the head is gone. And then he said, "How long does it take you to shoot?" What am I going to say? Gaff, I cannot play, my toe is sore.
Imagine this. United had arguably the best scorer of the early 2000s, but he hated sharing the limelight. This man is Ruud van Nistelrooy. Reminds you of Ronaldo, right? Yeah, Ruud van Nistelrooy hated him too. Ruud van Nistelrooy and Cristiano Ronaldo had beef. Van Nistelrooy hated the way Ronaldo took so long to cross the ball to him. You see, in the early 2000s, a wide man's job was primarily to stretch the width of the pitch and cross it to the strikers. Teams played with two strikers back then. It was all about the 4-4-2. Ronaldo was a brand new type of winger. He wanted to dribble and then cut inside. He even sometimes played inverted so he could cut in and shoot. Van Nistelrooy hated this, as it meant fewer chances were being created for him. Ronaldo and Van Nistelrooy had a bust-up so bad that Van Nistelrooy allegedly told Cristiano Ronaldo he found a new dad in Carlos Queiroz, Ferguson's assistant just after Ronaldo's dad, who was an alcoholic, had died. Carlos Queiroz asked him to show respect, and he said he didn't respect anyone there. He later apologized, but Ronaldo was not having it. Van Nistelrooy said, "I was frustrated at the time because I was used to playing with David Beckham. It was telepathy. We knew exactly what he was going to do. Then Cristiano Ronaldo came and it was different. He was running everywhere, he would dribble, he would be unpredictable." Asked about feeling frustration with his new Portuguese teammate, Van Nistelrooy replied, "It got a bit out of hand with the situation. I think the way we are in a relationship, Cristiano and I, is fine now in general. It's been really blown up. It was an argument in training. That's the story, but in the end we figured it out together and we moved on and the relationship is perfect. It was a transition moment in the team with younger guys," he added. Wayne Rooney came, Ronaldo came, young promising guys. We needed some time to adjust. I would also talk to me now. We didn't have patience. Crazy, right? Join us as we uncover the striker who only wanted to score himself. After spending his formative years at Nooit Gedacht and Margii, 17-year-old Ruud van Nistelrooy signed his first professional contract with Dutch Eredivisie side Den Bosch in 1993. Van Nistelrooy's early days at Den Bosch was slightly underwhelming, with the young Dutchman netting only 4 goals from midfield in his first 3 seasons at the club. The 1996-97 campaign, however, proved to be the breakthrough season for Van Nistelrooy, with his return of 12 goals in 31 appearances, signifying his readiness to make the step up to the big league. Indeed, Eredivisie side Heerenveen shared these sentiments and signed the 22-year-old Van Nistelrooy in 1997. Upon his arrival at Heerenveen, Van Nistelrooy was convinced by coach Volpe de Haan to abandon his midfield role and play up front instead. It was a move that paid immediate dividends, as Van Nistelrooy scored an impressive 13 times in his debut season in the Eredivisie. That would be his only season at the club. However, as Van Nistelrooy's noteworthy performances had caught the eye of heavyweights PSV Eindhoven, the Eredivisie runners-up splashed €6.3 million on the newfound hitman, which at the time was a record transfer fee between 2 Dutch clubs. It would prove to be a bargain over the next 3 seasons. As fate would have it, Van Nistelrooy's first goal in the red and white of PSV came against his former employers and set the wheels in motion for a remarkable goal-scoring season. Van Nistelrooy led PSV back to the Eredivisie crown with an incredible haul of 31 goals in just 34 games, a tally that earned him the Golden Boot and Dutch Player of the Year awards. The 1999-00 season saw more of the same from the prolific Van Nistelrooy. By March, he had raced to 29 goals in just 23 appearances and looked set to complete a deal to join English giants Manchester United. Then disaster struck. The Dutch international suffered a rupture to his anterior cruciate knee ligaments, which ruled him out for the best part of the year. His season was over, and the deal with United fell through. Despite missing the latter part of PSV's campaign, Van Nistelrooy still collected the Golden Boot Award for his 29-goal haul, proving for the second consecutive season that he was the Netherlands' premier striker. United were actually tipped off about the Dutchman's brilliance by a surprise insider, Sir Alex Ferguson's son, Darren. Speaking in a 2001 interview with the Daily Telegraph, Fergie revealed he was told about Van Nistelrooy and urged to sign him right away by his son, who was having a trial in the Netherlands with Heerenveen, which happens to be the Dutchman's former club. However, the player and his club did not agree to the additional tests, as they believed it would only hamper his recovery, and so the deal was cancelled. The following season was predominantly spent on rehabilitation and yielded Van Nistelrooy with just 12 appearances across all competitions. Despite his lack of game time, though, Van Nistelrooy's goal-scoring exploits over the previous 2 seasons had done enough to convince Manchester United of his quality, and they returned with a £19 million war chest to complete the deal that had failed the year before.
International will commit himself to Old Trafford for the next 5 years.
After what happened last year, I'm so happy that everything came along very good. Of course, last year was close, and it was a big disappointment that it didn't come through. But now, after a hard time fighting to come back, and my comeback, that was really nice.
The record-breaking sum was a fitting fee for one of the world's most feared strikers. His stay in Eindhoven was short in time but rich in quality, as in 3 years with PSV, Van Nistelrooy netted an incredible 62 goals in just 69 Eredivisie appearances, leading the club to the domestic crown in the 1998-99 and 1999 and 2000 seasons, and also was named the Dutch Player of the Year in his 3 seasons at PSV. Given the nature and extent of his injury the year before, Man United's decision to splash the cash on Van Nistelrooy was something of a gamble. As with all members of gambling, though, the higher the stakes, the higher the reward. And the reward from this hand was to be plenty. Van Nistelrooy netted on his debut for United in a 2-1 Charity Shield loss to Liverpool before scoring twice more on his Premier League debut against Fulham. His season went from strength to strength from then on, as the Dutchman went on to net 23 goals in the league and a tournament best 10 in the Champions League. Included in his tally was a record-breaking run-in in which Van Nistelrooy became the first player to score 8 consecutive Premier League matches. His incredible individual performances weren't enough to earn United either of the domestic or European titles, but did see him rewarded with the PFA Players Player of the Season award. It's hard to imagine that Van Nistelrooy could top his exploits from the season before, but he did just that in the 2002-03 campaign, and some style too. The prolific frontman's 25 goals in 34 games led United to the Premier League title and earned him the much-coveted Golden Boot award. He soon earned another, as for the second consecutive season, he was the top goal scorer in the Champions League. The accolades kept pouring in for Van Nistelrooy's performances throughout the season, and also earned him the PFA Player of the Season award and saw UEFA name him as the best striker in Europe. All in all, Van Nistelrooy ended the season with an incredible return of 44 goals in 52 appearances for the Red Devils. The 2003-04 season kicked off in a familiar vein, with Van Nistelrooy smashing another record, this time his own. By scoring in the first 2 matches of the new season, Van Nistelrooy became the first player in Premier League history to score in 10 consecutive matches. It was a season filled with milestones for Van Nistelrooy, as on the 7th of February, he scored his 100th goal for Man United in a thrilling 4-3 win over Everton. The Dutchman was also an instrumental figure in United's victorious FA Cup run, as he netted 6 goals, including 2 in the final against Millwall. In between all the accolades, trophies, and milestones, however, Van Nistelrooy was at the center of proceedings on a day that would define the Arsenal versus Manchester United derby for years to come. Van Nistelrooy had been instrumental in Patrick Vieira being dismissed for the Gunners earlier in the game before the Dutchman stepped up and missed a last-minute penalty. After missing the penalty, the Arsenal players jumped and screamed in his face. The heated encounter ended 0-0, and Arsenal ultimately went on to win the league unbeaten. Van Nistelrooy missed out on large part of the following season through injury, but still managed a return of 16 goals in 27 appearances. Included in that, and despite his injuries, Van Nistelrooy once again collected the Champions League Golden Boot award for his return of 8 goals in the competition. It was also a season that saw the Dutchman become Manchester United's highest-ever goal scorer in European competitions, surpassing the record previously held by Dennis Law. Van Nistelrooy also exacted a measure of revenge on Arsenal, as his goal against the Gunners earlier in the campaign had ended their invincible streak at 49 matches, though he would later receive a 3-match ban for a foul on Ashley Cole during the match. A string of rifts with Louis Saha, new boy Cristiano Ronaldo, and manager Alex Ferguson ultimately resulted in the 2005-06 campaign being Van Nistelrooy's last at Old Trafford. The Dutchman's 24 goals that season saw him reach 150 goals for United, a tally that took him just 219 appearances to achieve. Van Nistelrooy's time at Manchester United may have come to a sour end, but his performances and goals over the last 5 seasons have solidified his name in the club's folklore. He was truly a legend in red. Many had made the journey from Holland to England before, and many have made it since. But few, if any, have made the transition with such prolific efficiency as Ruud van Nistelrooy. Alas, his time in Manchester and indeed in the Premier League was at its end. Real Madrid had come calling. The Spanish superpower coughed up 14 million euros for Van Nistelrooy in July 2006 and saw an immediate return from the clinical Dutchman. Van Nistelrooy netted a hat-trick against Levante in just his second league match for Madrid before scoring all 4 goals in a 4-1 win over Osasuna in November. Just as he had done in the Premier League before, Van Nistelrooy equaled the then longest scoring streak in La Liga by netting in 7 consecutive matches on his way to winning the Pichichi. Real Madrid's investment in Van Nistelrooy had well and truly paid off, as his 25 goals led the club to yet another La Liga crown. Van Nistelrooy's arrival at the Santiago Bernabeu the season before had been the spark of a Dutch revolution at Madrid, with the club bringing in Wesley Sneijder, Arjen Robben, and Royston Drenthe for the 2007-08 campaign. With a supporting cast of countrymen, Van Nistelrooy went on with business as usual, netting an impressive 16 goals in 24 appearances as Real Madrid retained the title. Despite his fine goal-scoring return, the injury had seen a marked downturn in game time for Van Nistelrooy and would ultimately result in his spell with Madrid coming to an end. Over the next season and a half, the Dutch international managed just 16 appearances across all competitions for Madrid, as a serious knee injury and a host of subsequent knocks saw him fall out of favor at the Bernabeu. Game time had become such a rarity for the once infallible Van Nistelrooy that in January 2010 he opted to leave the club and join Hamburg in the Bundesliga. Despite the unspectacular end to his time with Los Blancos, Van Nistelrooy's return of 64 goals in 96 appearances was a true reflection that not only could he hold his own with the best, but that in his prime he was one of the best. An 18-month spell with Hamburg ensured before Van Nistelrooy returned to Spain for one last season, seeing out his career at money-rich Malaga. The prolific forward retired in 2012, having amassed an incredible 346 career club goals in 589 appearances. Van Nistelrooy's achievements throughout his career at club level earned him prolonged recognition within the Dutch national team. He made his debut for the senior side in 1998 and represented the Orange over the course of the next 13 years. Van Nistelrooy would have to wait 6 years before making his tournament debut, though, as he missed Euro 2000 through injury, and the Netherlands then failed to qualify for the 2002 World Cup. His chance eventually came during the Netherlands' failed Euro 2004 campaign, where Van Nistelrooy scored in all 3. The relationship between player and manager broke down to such an extent that Van Nistelrooy announced his international retirement in January 2007. Van Nistelrooy would later retire and return before finally playing his last game in 2011. His record for the national team was as impressive as one would expect, with Van Nistelrooy netting a goal every other game for the Netherlands. By the time he had hung up his boots, the prolific striker had netted 34 goals in 70 appearances, a record which today sees him sit 5th on the Netherlands' all-time goal-scoring charts. Football purists have always been quick to damn the Dutch striker with false praise, to acknowledge his skill as a finisher, but qualify it with criticism of his overall play. Van Nistelrooy is the 6th highest scorer of all time for the Netherlands, averaging a goal every 2 games over his international career, and yet the general perception is that he was never in the same league as the other players on that list. Dutch football journalist Ron de Rijk said of Van Nistelrooy, when the striker was in his prime in 2004, "I think Patrick Kluivert is a better footballer, but not as good a goal scorer. Kluivert does things in a more sophisticated way. Van Nistelrooy is only worried about the ball going in." It is tempting to assume that there is a bit of misplaced snobbery tied up in this view of Van Nistelrooy, and the idea that he was nothing more than a tap-in artist does him a huge disservice. He was, for a sustained period, one of the undisputed top strikers in the world, and should be remembered and cherished as such. He was, of course, a goal scorer at heart, and his career statistics in this regard are truly exceptional. At club level, he scored 347 goals in 589 appearances, an average of a goal every 0.59 games. This in itself is a very respectable goal-to-game ratio, better than Robin van Persie of 0.47, Dennis Bergkamp of 0.38, and Patrick Kluivert of 0.43. However, this figure takes into account his much less productive spells at Hamburg and Malaga, when injuries had taken their toll and he was nowhere near the player he had once been. At his peak, the figures are truly remarkable. At Manchester United, he was averaging 0.68 goals per game, and at Real Madrid, 0.64. PSV Eindhoven, 0.78. The numbers are similarly impressive. Van Nistelrooy was no flat-track bully either. He regularly scored goals in important games against the top sides. Just ask Arsenal, and his record in the Champions League is nothing short of phenomenal. Despite never winning the competition or even reaching a final, he finished as top scorer in the 2001, 02, 02, and 03 and 04-05 seasons. But it is impossible to get a true sense of the player Van Nistelrooy was by merely looking at the figures. He was much more than he is often given credit for, a scorer of great goals as well as a great scorer of goals. It is probably for his spell at Manchester United that the striker is best remembered. And it was at Old Trafford indisputably that he was at his peak. The 2001-05 Van Nistelrooy was one of the most complete strikers the Premier League has ever seen, combining fearsome pace and power with intelligent movement, and of course, unerring finishing ability. He could play with his back to goal or run in behind, could head the ball, and was comfortable shooting with both feet. He was also excellent at bringing his teammates into play, finishing the 2001-02 Champions League season with more assists than any other player in the competition. Technically, Van Nistelrooy was outstanding, like his compatriots, Marco van Basten and Robin van Persie. His technique when volleying the ball was something to behold, and his control in the area was exceptional, always giving him that extra half second to reposition his body before finishing. Van Nistelrooy never stayed at one place too long, but he was admired and even adored wherever he went. Whether in the red of Manchester, the white of Madrid, or the red and white of Eindhoven, Van Nistelrooy was a goal-scoring machine and is rightly remembered as one of football's finest ever finishers. If you enjoyed this video, smash the notification tab to never miss any of our videos.